Welcome back to another edition of Components Breakdown. Today we're going to look at the 2010 Essen release game called London. London is a 2 to 4 player hand management card drafting game that takes about 90 minutes to complete. The game's premise takes place after the Great Fire of 1666, and for about 250 years each of the players is going to be re-establishing the city of London or recreating its history through several card plays and actions that they will be taking until all the cards in the deck run out. So let's go ahead and open up the box and take a quick look inside. I wanted to start off by saying this is the international version of the game, and it also has some limited edition components too, and I'll explain those once I get to them. It ships with 3 different rule books, and one of them of course is in English. It's very well explained. This is a very simple game to understand. Plenty of nice rules, clarifications in here. It's a game that's going to take you about maybe 15 minutes to learn and maybe 5-10 minutes to teach to someone. It's very intuitive. There is a crib sheet that is used. Unfortunately, it is not in English though. Inside, you're going to see that I put stuff in Plano boxes again. There are loans, there are victory point markers in denominations of 1, 5, 10, and 20, and there are poverty markers. One of the things I wanted to point out that I do not like about this game is the fact that these markers are one-sided. For some reason they printed black on the other side. Not sure why, but that's what they did. Now these are the limited edition components minus the underground tokens. They're all wood components. There are denominations of 5 and 1 for the coins, and then houses for each of the buildings. Again, you can only get that with the limited edition of the game that was at Essen. If you do not buy that, you're going to be getting these plastic coins that you see here. Still high quality, but not nearly as nice as passing around wooden. The game is very much a card-driven game, so you're going to get a huge stack of cards, and we'll explain those in a little more detail in just a moment. You're going to get a game board, which is fold out, and the last thing is unpunched chits here. Now these are what will be used for players that do not have the limited edition. So you'll be placing these for each of the players onto the game board. So that is the box. Let's go ahead and set up the game and start explaining the components in a little more detail. Now I've laid out all the components and we're going to walk through them very briefly, explain them in as much detail as I can so that we can jump right into the gameplay. As I previously said, this is very much a card-driven game, so we'll explain the cards last, and we'll go directly into the game board. On the game board, you're going to notice at the top of the map, there is several different boroughs or regions. There are 20 of them total, and each of these is segregated by a thick red line. Now, each player can buy one of these boroughs at any given time, and they would take one of their tokens that you see here and place it on there. Only one of those tokens can occupy any borough at one time, and once you place it there, it's there for the rest of the game. When you buy a borough, you look at it and that's the cost of it. So it's going to cost you £4. You would take 4 cards in any combination of cards off the top of the deck or in the card tableau, and we'll get to that in a moment. And you would get 3 victory points at the end of the game. Each of these has different conditions for buying them, how many cards you get, and how many victory points. Also, when you start building at the beginning of the game, you have to build in one of the red regions, and we'll get to that once we start explaining the gameplay a little bit better. It is broken by a river, and to build adjacently, you have to build over these bridges, simply saying that you cannot, if you're in this region, you cannot build in this region because it's not connected by a bridge. You'd have to build here first and there. Also on the board, there is a spot for poverty points at the end of the game, showing you how many points or how many victory points you lose at the end of the game for X number of poverty. At the bottom of the board is a tableau. This is where you will be placing cards that you expend to place cards in front of you. I'll explain that once again. Sorry, there's a lot of things to explain, so I'll explain them once I get to them. Just know that on the tableau there are 2 rows, a top row and a bottom row. For a 2-player game, you will be using these 6 spaces. If you play a 3-player game, you will be using the spaces to the darker color. And if you play a full 4-player game, you will be using all of the spaces on the board. There are several tokens, as I previously mentioned, for the limited edition of the game. There are wooden tokens for the money. There are cardboard tokens for the loans, which come in denominations of 10 and 40. Once again, as I previously stated, they have black backs, which is not my favorite in the world. There are underground markers, which are placed on the board at designated underground space. There are victory point tokens that come in denominations of 1, 5, 10, and 20. There are poverty tokens in Sorry, they're kind of hard to see on this black background, but there are round ones, and there are cubes representing 5 poverty and 1 poverty each. Now, the main gist of the game, as I said, is the cards. Let's explain what these cards do. There are several different kinds of cards in the game, and when you first shuffle up the deck, you have to arrange the deck in a specific order. There are A cards, B cards, and C cards. When you look at the cards, they are denoted by, let's get down here, that is a C card, this is an A card. So you're going to shuffle all the A cards together, all the B cards, and all the C cards. You're going to place the A on top of the B and place the B on top of the C and make one stack or one deck, as you see there. Now, each of the cards is going to do different things. Some cards simply you play them and then you discard them to the discard pile. Some cards you play in front of you and build a display or a tableau of cards, very similar to games like San Juan or games like Race for the Galaxy. When you play these cards, you always have to expend another card of it. So if I were to play the Great Fire Monument that you see here, it is a pink card, meaning that I could place it in my tableau in front of me, but I'd have to discard another pink card from my hand. When you discard a card, you simply place it on one of these spots. Now, each of the cards has different values to bring in. Every card in the game to play, you have to expend a card of the same color. Some of them also have dollar amounts you have to pay in order to bring them in. For instance, this one costs $5 additional plus a pink card. This one costs $3 additional plus a brown card. There are some cards that have victory points on them. These are worth victory points at the end of the game. It doesn't matter if they're flipped, if they're upside down, or if they've been expended. There are cards that have different items on the bottom here. What these are called are stone tablets. The only cards that actually play in your tableau are cards that have this stone tablet on the bottom. So for instance, this blue card would not play in front of you. The stone tablets have 3 different corded off areas. The first area is when you play your city. It is a cost in order to use that card. The second one, let me get one here that's not so glary. There we go. That is a cost of how much it costs to use that card. The second one is the benefit you get from using the card. And the third action is either one of 2 things. You either have to flip the card and the card is gone forever, you cannot use it anymore, or some cards, when you use them, such as that you see here, they do not flip. They stay in front of you as long as you wish to use them. Very nice. Now, there's all kinds of different benefits you get from using cards or running your city. Some of them will give you money, such as £4. Some of them will lessen your poverty by 2. Some will give you instant victory points that we showed with the tiles. Some will give you victory points and lose poverty. And some will just make you lose a whole bunch of poverty. There are 2 other different types of things on the cards. There are cards that have an action that you can always use on them, and those are above the picture. And there are cards that you can have actions once you activate the card, and those are on the bottom. So that is what the cards do, and this will better be explained once I start explaining the rules. So let's jump right in and start getting right into the rules. At the start of the game, each player is going to be given all of their building tokens. There are 11 total in each collar. Each player is going to be given £5 and 1 round poverty marker, which stands for 5. Each player is going to be dealt 6 cards off the top of the deck. Now remember, as we seeded the deck, the top cards they're going to get are the A cards, and eventually you'll filter down to B and C. The end of the game is triggered when all the cards are gone. Now, on the first player's turn, which is determined randomly, they have to make a choice of 4 different actions. But before they do that, at the start of every player's turn, they're going to draw 1 card. They can draw it either from the top of the deck or one of the cards that is here on this display. At the start of the game, there are no cards there, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So the very first action they can take is that they can play cards to their tableau. As I previously mentioned, playing cards to your tableau has a cost to them, and that is expending cards. So the first thing we're going to look at, say for instance, the player here has 2 pink, 3 brown, and 1 blue. It'd be impossible for them to play the blue card because they can't expend a blue. So let's say the first thing what to do is they want to play the fishmonger, which is free. There is no cost, but they have to get rid of a brown card. So they take the brown card and they put it in the first spot on the board. They can keep playing as many cards as they so wish to play. If they wish to play the Great Fire Monument, they do so. They would pay $5 to the bank because it costs $5. And again, they'd have to get rid of one of their cards that matches the color of the one they played, which is pink. That is all that that player can do. So they have used up their turn. Their turn is done. That is playing cards. Now there's a lot of different combinations that trigger off particular cards that you will have in your tableau. So this works again very much like Race for the Galaxy and games like San Juan. And the second action they can do is they can run their city. Say for instance they started the next turn as you see here. They get to run their city. Running their city simply means using all of the cards in your tableau. Well, this card doesn't do anything for you other than give you 4 victory points at the end of the game. So it's not going to be able to do anything. However, they can run their fishmonger. It has no activation cost. It would give them $5 from the bank. They would take $5, put it on their side, and the action at the end is they have to flip that card, meaning that card cannot be used anymore for the rest of the game. The second thing that triggers on the playing your city is a poverty stage. Now, what you do is however many stacks of cards you have in front of you. So the more cards and the more stacks you have, the harder your poverty is going to be. Now, you can negate that by building fewer stacks and keep placing cards over other cards. At any time that you play a card, it can be placed over something else. However, you can't use what's below it. So let's jump back into the poverty. Sorry that I'm jumping around. At the end of this play or run your city phase, you have to count how many stacks, how many cards in your hand, and however many cities you have on the board, which is none right now. So I would add 2 plus 2 cards in my hand. I would take 4 poverty from the bank. That is very, very bad, so to speak. You don't want to have a lot of poverty, and you have to get rid of it. So trying to keep your stacks to a minimum and your hand to a minimum is key to winning this game. The third action you can do on your turn is buy land. As I showed you before, you simply pick one of the pieces of land, you spend that much money, for instance £4, you would gain 4 cards from either anything up here or anything off the top of the deck in any combination you wish to use, and then you would get that many victory points at the end of the game. The last action you can take is to simply do nothing and draw 3 cards, either from a combination again of what's here available that other people have played off, or from the top of the deck. Now remember, you're only allowed 1 of those 4 actions every round. Okay, that's the game in a nutshell. This game reminds me so much of San Juan. I keep saying that word, San Juan, Race for the Galaxy, but that's what it is. It is a simplified version of that has been extended for a long period of time. We played last night, and I have to admit, I've only played 1 game of this. But we played it for almost 2 hours. It's a very long game. The stack of cards is huge. And maybe that is mitigated if you play with more players. I'm not for sure. Did I enjoy the game? Yes, I very much enjoy the game. I think it's brilliantly made. I think it's really well executed. It's wonderfully designed. It's easy to learn. Very easy to teach. My wife trounced me because I was terrible at minimizing my poverty. At the end of the game, you get a lot of different scoring systems for the amount of land you own, for the amount of money you have at the end of the game, how many cards get taken off. For your poverty level, you take a huge hit with that. It's a lot of different scoring systems, as well as the loans, which I didn't really mention in the game, but at any time in the game you can take out a loan, as you see here, and you get $10 immediately, but you have to pay $15 back at the end of the game, or take another penalty. A lot of different options in the game. Do I like the game? I do. I really do like the game. I think it's a little bit, not a little bit, I think it is too long. I think it's simply just too long of a game, though, for me to sit down and want to play for a long period of time. It recreates the rebuilding of London wonderfully. It really does, and the game system works wonderfully. It's just not the most interesting game to me for a couple of reasons. One, that it's too long. 2, I don't think that the game board is that beautiful to look at. The cards are pretty well illustrated, but they've got a very old school style to them. Not something that typically bounces out for me and says, oh, buy me. And it's very much a Euro game. You can feel it. It's Euro. It's really Euro based, and that's not something that I typically really endorse or really enjoy. However, the gameplay mechanics, as I said, are solid. The card drafting system is really well done. It's really well thought out. And if you're into this style of game, this is something I would definitely take a look at, play a couple times, and see if you like it. Just know that you're in for a long game. That is London, and thank you so much for watching.